They said she was born of temptation and raised on lies by the preacher. The preacher kept finding reasons to knock on her door after dark. I came into the town of Bellriver on a Tuesday just as the sun was dying over the hills like a blood sacrifice. Dust clung to my coat and my conscience. Bellriver was the kind of place where men kept their sins quiet and their Bibles loud, but even over the sermons in the choir there was always her. Her name was Cora Lynn. She stood on the porch of the boarding house like a storm, dressed in silk, barefoot, with hair the color of wet ash and eyes like they'd seen too much, or not nearly enough. Every man in town stared too long, every wife pretended not to notice, and Reverend Silas has stared the longest. Had preached hellfire every Sunday since the town was carved out of rock, and Regret said the devil moved in a woman's hips and waited behind closed doors. But somehow that man ended up in front of hers nearly every night. Said he was saving her soul. But I heard the boards creak when he went in, and I know the sound a man makes when he's losing a battle he don't want to win. I was just the stranger then, renting the room across the hall, fresh off the trail with a bottle in my coat, and too many memories I hadn't earned. I didn't come for trouble, but trouble has a way of talking sweet when it's wearing lace and whispering at midnight. First time I saw her up close, she was humming to herself. Barely clothed, brushing her hair by the open window like she'd forgotten modesty was even a thing. Maybe she had, or maybe she just liked to see who'd watch. And I watched, Lord help me, I watched. Silas came stomping down the hall. Not long after he glanced at me, nostrils flaring like a hound catching scent of his own shame. He didn't say a word, just knocked on her door with the back of his hand. Soft, almost reverent. It opened. He went inside, and I heard the click of the lock behind him. Now folks around town had theories, said she was a witch, a harlot, an omen of what comes when men forget God. But none of them could stay away either. Not really, not even the women, truth be told. They hated her, but they feared her more. Not because she was sinful, but because she was free. And freedom in a town built on secrets is the loudest sin of all. I told myself I wouldn't get involved. But one night I heard her crying, and that was the beginning of everything. I should have ignored it. A woman's cry in the middle of the night in a place like Bellriver ain't a rare thing. It echoes through thin walls and bad memories. But this sound, it wasn't fear, it was frustration, rage. Heartbreak twisted into breath. I opened my door just a crack. The hallway was lit by a single flickering oil lamp, shadows dancing like they knew what came next. Across the way her door was still shut, but I could see the corner of her dress, a pale slip of blue, caught in the jam like she'd tried to close it in a hurry. I don't know why I did it, maybe because the whiskey hadn't dulled the ache in my chest that night. Maybe because I saw something in her eyes earlier that felt like recognition, or maybe I just wanted to see what kind of sin a preacher would risk his soul for. So I knocked. Not loud, just once. The crying stopped, and then the door opened, just wide enough for her eyes to meet mine. Red-rimmed and burning. "What do you want?" she asked, voice like honey poured over a blade. I didn't have an answer, I just looked at her. The slip she wore was barely holding together, shoulder torn. Her lip was bleeding, and the room behind her smelled of candle smoke and sweat. Then I saw him, the Reverend, standing at the far end of the room, shirt undone, collar askew, fists clenched. When he saw me, he froze. Guilt rose up in his face like heat off desert sand. "You got no business here," he said. And maybe I didn't, but something about the way she didn't flinch, the way her body stood still, while her hands trembled at her sides, told me I couldn't walk away. "You all right, miss?" I asked her. She hesitated, then, slowly, she opened the door wider. Her gaze didn't leave mine. I am now. It wasn't permission. It was a dare. The Reverend stormed out a second later, boots loud on the floorboards, face a twisted sermon of fury and shame. He didn't look back, not once, but I heard him mutter something under his breath as he passed me. "She'll ruin you too," and maybe he was right. I didn't go into her room that night. I didn't have to. The truth had already crept out into the hallway and curled itself around my ankles. But that was the moment I stopped being just a man renting a room. I became part of the story, and stories like this never end well. It was near midnight again when I heard her steps in the hallway. Barefoot, soft but certain. There's a sound a woman makes when she's decided something she can't take back. It ain't loud, it's quieter than a whisper. But it changes the air, changes you. My door creaked open before I could rise from the bed. There she stood, Cora Lynn, backlit by the hallway's dying lamp, her silhouette framed like a painting no church would dare hang. The same torn slip hugged her frame, and in her arms, wrapped in her shawl, she held a Bible. She didn't speak right away, just walked and closed the door behind her, and sat on the edge of my bed. Like she'd done it before, her hand reached for the lamp on my nightstand, dimming the flame till the room was bathed in gold and shadow. I didn't come for forgiveness. She said I didn't offer any. She looked up at me then, really looked, eyes full of something I couldn't place, not sadness, not desire. Maybe just truth, the kind a woman's forced to swallow her whole life until it poisons her from the inside out. I was 13 when he baptized me. She began thumbing the spine of the good book like it might bite. Said the water would wash me clean, but the way his hands lingered on my back, the way he whispered scripture into my hair. It felt more like drowning. I didn't interrupt you, don't speak when a woman's peeling back her scars. After my mama died, he took me in. Said it was the Lord's work. Said temptation lived in me like a sickness. And he had to draw it out every touch, every night I woke with him kneeling beside my bed. He called it healing. Said my moans were demons leaving me. Her voice didn't shake, but I did. She reached into the folds of her shawl and pulled something out. A small silver cross bent at the stem. She said it between us. He gave me that after the first night. Said it meant I was his now. That no man would ever want what he'd already claimed. I stared at the cross like it might curse me just for looking too long. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you knocked, she whispered. And you didn't ask what I'd done to deserve it. You asked if I was all right. Then she leaned forward, slow, her breath close enough to taste. Vanilla, tobacco, sorrow. He's not done with me, she said, but if you don't stop him, I will. And just like that, she was gone. Left across the Bible, and the door cracked behind her. I couldn't sleep after that. Not with her story crawling up my spine and settling like a storm behind my eyes. The next morning, Reverend Silas stood at the pulpit preaching fire and brimstone like nothing had changed. But his voice trembled on every line of grace. Because he knew what I knew now. And grace was the one thing that was never coming for him. The cross she left behind weighed more than iron. I kept it in my palm as the preacher hollered from the pulpit that morning, shouting about lust and hell and wolves in sheep's clothing. He had the whole town by the throat, and they didn't even know they were choking. But I watched him. His eyes kept drifting past the congregation up toward the balcony. That's where Cora sat alone, wearing a dress that caught the light like it wanted to misbehave, red with sleeves that slipped from her shoulders like they were tired of pretending to hold on. She didn't look ashamed. She looked like a reckoning. And I knew deep down in whatever soul I had left that something was coming, something heavy, something that smelled like blood. That night I could stay in that room. I walked the edge of town past the saloon where lonely men drank away their wedding vows, past the livery where horses stood in silence like they knew secrets too. I ended up by the old church graveyard where names were carved into crooked stones and the wind sang psalms no one remembered. That's where I saw her. Cora Lynn sitting cross-legged on a flat tombstone, barefoot again, with the same Bible in her lap. I knew you'd come, she said without looking up. Wasn't sure I would. You were. She patted the space beside her. I sat. For a while we didn't speak, just let the night settle around us thick with crickets and judgment. Then she opened the Bible. But it wasn't two verses she'd marked. It was letters tucked into the binding, dozens of them, yellowed and folded, each one written in the same trembling hand. I started writing them when I was 16, she said. Every time he came into my room, I wrote what he said, what he did, what I felt. Thought maybe one day, if I died, someone would find them and finally believe me. She handed me one. I opened it. Read it. And when I finished, I didn't say a word, didn't have one worth saying. She turned to me then, face soft in the moonlight, and said, "You, we're not like him. That scares me more." Why? Because part of me still wants to trust. Her fingers brushed mine, and it was like the whole world held its breath. But she pulled away, stood up, and walked barefoot through the graves like she belonged there, like she was already halfway between this world and the next. Before she disappeared into the dark, she said one last thing. "He'll come for me tonight, he always does after I speak the truth." And I knew then. I wasn't just part of her story anymore. I was part of her war. That night I didn't sleep. The boarding house creaked like it was warning me. Floorboards groaned under secrets too old to bear, and the wind whistled through cracks. I sat by the window, revolver on my lap, cross still clutched in my hand like a prayer I didn't to know how to say. And then I heard it, footsteps, heavy, measured, climbing the stairs with purpose, not guilt. I crossed the room in 2 strides, cracked the door just enough to see him. Reverend Silas, black coat swirling around his boots, candle in one hand, Bible in the other. But he wasn't carrying it like a man of God. He held it like a hammer, a weapon. He stopped at her door, knocked once, twice. I stepped into the hallway, no words, no warning. He turned startled, but only for a breath. Then he smiled, cold and narrow. "This doesn't concern you, son," he said. "She told me everything. I'm sure she did. That girl's been spinning lies since she could stand. That's what the devil does. Makes angels sound like whores and whores sound like martyrs. She kept your letters." His eyes flicked, just for a moment. "You think they'll believe a stranger? You think this town wants the truth?" he asked. "They want their shepherd, they want someone to blame, and if you get in my way, they'll hang you. For touching what Dante belonged to you." He reached for her door. That's when I cocked the hammer. "You take one more step," I said, voice low, "and I swear to God I'll bury you in the churchyard before sunrise." He froze, but he didn't back away. Instead, he lowered the Bible to his side, looked me in the eye, and for the first time I saw it. Not power, not fury, fear. He stepped away from the door, but not toward me. He turned, slowly, and started down the stairs. "I warned you," he called over his shoulder. "There's more than just me who wants her gone. When the church burns, everyone inside burns with it." Then he vanished into the dark. I rushed to her door, knocked once, no answer. I opened it. The room was empty, the window wide open, curtain flapping like a flag at half-mast. She was gone. But she'd left the letters behind, in a neat pile on the bed. And something else, too, a single blood-stained glove. The glove was small, lacy, torn at the thumb. The blood on it wasn't too fresh. But it wasn't too old either. It told me one thing: she hadn't run. Not alone anyway. I grabbed the letters, tucked them into my coat, and lit out into the night. Bellriver slept like a corpse. Shutters bolted, lamps snuffed. Not a whisper on the wind. But I knew this town, even if it didn't know me. Knew where a girl like Coraline might go when the wolves came sniffing. There was one place she trusted, one place the Reverend wouldn't dare follow, at least not without eyes watching. The bell tower. She once told me in passing that it was the highest point in town. Said she, "Climb up there sometimes and imagine the wind carrying her someplace new. A place where men don too hold Bibles in one hand and chains in the other," she'd said. I found her there, tucked in the shadow behind the bell. Knees drawn to her chest, coat wrapped tight around her shoulders. Moonlight kissed her cheek, but it didn't warm her. She didn't look at me as I approached. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "You did, you just didn't think I'd follow." That made her smile, barely. "I left the glove so you'd know it wasn't tot over," she whispered. "He said if I didn't open the door tonight, he'd drag me in front of the whole town. He'd tell them I seduced him, that I tempted him, that I held him down and begged him to." Her voice caught, broke. I didn't speak, just sat beside her for a long while. Neither of us said a thing. Then she turned slowly and laid her head against my shoulder. "I've been called a sin so many times I started to believe it," she murmured. "But you look at me like I'm something worth protecting, Because you are. She looked up. You still don't know what I've done. I don't need to, yes, you do. She reached into her coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth, placed it gently in my hands. I unwrapped it slow. A straight razor, polished, clean, except for the tiny fleck of dried blood near the hinge. I took it from him, she said, when I was 16. Hid it under my mattress for 2 years. I never used it. Not until the night he laid his hands on one of the other girls at the mission. She swallowed. I didn't cut him deep. Just enough to stop him. Long enough for her to run. But the next morning, he told everyone she was possessed. Said I carved her. He preached for 2 hours with his arm in a sling, cried while he told them I was sick, filthy, that he'd tried to save me and failed. She stared out over the rooftops of Bellriver like she could burn it all down with her eyes. I've been running ever since. I reached for her hand. She let me. I'm tired of running, she whispered. Then we stand. She turned to me, eyes gleaming. With what proof? These letters? That razor? They want to believe me. They'll believe me. Why? Why? I didn't answer. I kissed her. Not because it was right. Not because it was wise. But because if the world was going to condemn her anyway, I wanted at least one part of her story to hold a little tenderness, even if the rest was fire. Morning came fast, too fast. Bellriver woke to a sky the color of bruises and a cold that didn't belong to summer. The kind of cold that creeps up from the ground like something dead has been stirring underneath. The bell rang. Once. Twice. Then kept on like it was calling the town to judgment. I stood in the square with Cora Lynn beside me. Her hand tight in mine, but her face calm, too calm. The kind of calm you only see in folks who've already died once. They gathered slow, still half asleep. Shopkeepers, ranch hands, widows in shawls. Nobody spoke. They just watched as Reverend Silas climbed the church steps like a man walking into his own grave. He looked worse in daylight. Eyes bloodshot, collar wilted, that soft tremble in his left hand he used to hide behind scripture. He didn't open his Bible this time. He didn't have to, my brothers and sisters, he said, voice louder than it needed to be. There's a sickness among us, a darkness. It's not new, but it's grown bold. It wears red dresses. It walks barefoot after midnight. It lures men from their vows and boys from their innocence. And today, we cast it out. He turned and pointed at her, at Cora Lynn. She didn't flinch, but I stepped forward. You want to talk about darkness? I asked. Let's talk. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He sneered. You don't know this woman. I know her better than you ever did. And I've got her truth in my coat pocket. I pulled out the letters, all of them, folded, numbered, tear-stained, and ugly with memory. This is every time you crept into her room with your collar on, every lie you told her about salvation, every time you turned the gospel into a gag. The preacher's face cracked. He tried to laugh. She wrote those, he said, they're nothing but stories, a harlot's fantasy. Then let's read them out loud. I handed one to the blacksmith's wife, another to the schoolteacher, another to old Elias the undertaker. They opened them with slow hands, read in silence. And I watched something shift in their eyes, recognition. The blacksmith's wife turned pale. She wrote about my son. She said he came home from the mission last spring, would speak for days. I thought he was just tired. Silas went still, like a man realizing he'd just been caught standing on a gallows with the noose in his hand. Cora stepped forward. You said I was a sin, she said. But I was your secret, your scapegoat, your sacrifice. And then she opened her palm, revealed the silver cross, the same one he gave her after the first time he broke her. The town went quiet, so quiet I could hear the wind stop moving. Reverend Silas dropped his Bible. It hit the steps with a thud that echoed like thunder. And then he ran like a coward through the crowd down the alley, coat flapping behind him like the wings of a broken crow. No one stopped him, no one followed, because it was over, not justice, but truth. And in a place like Bellriver, sometimes that's the only kind of justice you ever get. We left Bellriver at dawn. No goodbyes, no promises, just dust behind us, and silence between Cora Lynn rode beside me on a borrowed mare. The hem of her dress torn where it caught the stirrups, wind pulling at her hair like it didn't want to let her go. Her eyes never looked back. Not once. Mine did. The town look small from the ridge, smaller than I remembered, like it had always been built to crumble the moment someone spoke the truth loud enough. We rode south toward the low country, past fields of wheat and bone-dry orchards, across a river where no preacher's name had ever been spoken. For the first time she smiled, not a big smile, just enough to remind me she was still whole underneath all the cracks. "You think they'll come after us?" She asked. "If they do," I said, "they'll wish they hadn't." She didn't laugh, but she reached for my hand, and that was better. We stopped at a broken-down inn 3 towns over, bought the last room with coin from the letters. A lifetime of pain traded for one night of peace. She lit a single candle on the bedside table, then stood in the glow watching her own shadows stretch along the wall. "Do you believe in redemption?" she asked me, voice soft. "I don't know, but I believe in you. That night, we didn't make love. Not in the way stories like to tell it. It wasn't heat or hunger, it was gentler, quieter, like 2 people building something sacred out of the wreckage. In the dark, she whispered things ill. Never repeat names, night secrets buried deeper than graves. And when she cried, I didn't hush her. I let her cry because sometimes the only way to heal is to bleed." It was 3 days later, just after sundown, when the past found us again. I'd gone into town for supplies. Cora stayed behind at the inn, said she wanted to write, said she wanted to remember something other than pain. I was halfway back, saddlebags full of bread and bullets, when I saw the stranger by the hitching post. Dressed in black hat, low long rifle slung across his back like it was part of him. He wasn't from around here. His boots were too clean, his eyes too still, and he was watching our window. I didn't draw. Not yet. I walked past like I didn't notice, took the side alley, climbed the stairs, slow, real quiet, heart thudding like war drums behind my ribs. Cora opened the door before I knocked. She knew. "There's a man downstairs," I said. She nodded. "I saw him 2 years ago in Bellriver. He worked for Silas before the church ever knew who Silas really was. Enforced things, collected favors, made girls disappear." Her voice was flat. "Not afraid. Just resolved." I loaded my revolver while she packed what little we had, letters, the razor, the silver cross. She didn't need much. Just proof and rage and memory. When we stepped out the door, the man was still there, still watching. "You the girl from Bellriver?" he asked. Cora didn't answer. "I was told to bring you back or make sure you don't talk anymore." I stepped between them. "You can try." He smiled. "You her savior now? No, just the man who won't walk away." It happened fast. Gun cleared, leather. My shot hit him in the shoulder, his missed high. He stumbled back, cursed, reached for the rifle, and Cora stepped forward, eyes like fire and ash. "You remember me?" she asked. He blinked, and then she slashed, the razor fast, clean across his cheek. He dropped to his knees, moaning like a wounded animal. She didn't finish him. She just leaned in and whispered, "Tell Silas I'm not afraid anymore. Tell him I kept the letters. Tell him I remember everything." Then we turned and walked away, left him bleeding in the dust. And for the first time, I think she felt free. We rode west. No more hiding. No more borrowed names. We crossed into New Mexico territory with nothing but a satchel of letters, and a quiet between us that felt peaceful for once, not empty, just full of things that didn't need saying anymore. We stopped near Santa Rosa, a stretch of land with broken fences and wild sage. Nobody claimed it. Nobody wanted it, and that's why we did it. Cora stood out there one morning, barefoot in the grass, holding a tin cup of coffee like it was holy wind pulling at her dress, that same soft smile I'd seen on the ridge outside Bellriver. Except now it had roots outside Bellriver. "You think we can build something here?" she asked. "I think we already are." She turned to me, lips curling slow. "I'm not someone you settle down with," she said. "I carry too much shadow." I walked over, took her hand. "So do I." She laughed. Light real, it danced up into the sky and scattered the ghosts around us. We built a small home, one room, wood stove, no church, no preacher, just quiet. She planted wildflowers, painted the door blue, said it reminded her that not all doors had to lead to sorrow. And one day she handed me the letters. All of them, she said, I want you to burn them. I stared at her. You sure? I'm tired of being remembered by what was done to me. I want to be remembered by what I chose, and in choosing you. I didn't speak, just nodded. That night we lit the fire. One by one the pages curled and blackened and rose as ash into the stars. She leaned against me, warm and still. And for the first time I realized something. She wasn't a sin. She was salvation. Not mine. Her own. And maybe that was the whole point all along.